Hi everyone, my name is Cynthia. Let's talk books. Today I would like to talk about one specific book. If you watch my January wrap-up, you already know what I thought of Eugénie Grandet by Honoré de Balzac. I loved this book, and because I am continuing my Reading the French Classics series, I would like to do some dedicated reviewing of this particular book. So, if you have come across this video because you've been assigned this book in class, let me say that you're welcome to watch, but if you're going to use any of my ideas, you're going to have to send me. That's how it works. On the other hand, if you haven't read the book, this video is not going to help you take a quiz or an exam on the book. I'm sorry, but my job is not to help you with your paper or with any exams that might be coming your way. What I will do in this video is just talk about some of the main themes of the book and why I ended up really loving this book. So, several themes that I will talk about, starting with greed. It is very clear to me that this is one of the main things that Balzac wanted to criticize about wealthier rural families in France. Knowing a little bit of the history of what Balzac was trying to do with his writing, I know he was specifically trying to write about rural life and specifically about the intimate life of a family here. It is a wealthy family in rural France, but it's also a family that hoards money, specifically the father, Grandet, the father. The greed just comes off the page, and also the greed of the other wealthy families that are in the area, to a detriment, right? Balzac presents greed as a negative trait that consumes the life of Grandet, the father, and eventually of his entire family. There is a difference here presented between the greed of rural Paris versus the greed of Paris. And I found that really interesting because he presents a Paris through the eyes of the cousin. The family has a cousin that comes to visit, and it's not like the cousin is any better necessarily. It's just a different kind of element that I think he's interested in criticizing about Paris. So that was quite interesting. The other element about greed that I found interesting in the book was just the way he describes how it sucks everything around you. Other people, other elements, and ultimately does not lead to good things. And so that was a message that I very much agreed with. Another element that really struck me about this book was female piety. Balzac spends paragraphs talking about Eugénie's piety and her femininity, and these were actually some of my favorite paragraphs because they're written quite beautifully, even though it is clearly written from a male perspective, idolizing a kind of female innocence and piety. But let me just I'll just read a couple of sentences here to just give you a taste of how he does this. He says, "In the innocent, monotonous life of a young girl, there comes a day of delight when the sun's rays flood into her heart, when a flower seems to express her thoughts, and when her heartbeats convey their fertile warmth to her brain, so that all her ideas dissolve into a vague longing. It is a day of innocent melancholy and tranquil happiness." That's just one sentence, and he goes on like that without a break for 2.5 pages. And I actually kind of loved it because even though it's clearly a bit off, there's also a lot of truth in it about, the moment in which you move from girlhood into your first love that is still an innocent kind of love. And so I just recognized elements of truth in his description of Eugénie Grandet. On the other hand, I think it is something that Balzac was also interested in criticizing, because for all her piety and innocence, he doesn't give her the ending you would expect. And that was brilliant. I just love that element of it because the message to me there was it doesn't really matter it doesn't matter how pious and innocent and virginal you remain. Like, at the end, if you're unhappy, you're unhappy. And it means that, all the other things served no real purpose if you don't end up a happy person. And I appreciate that. And because I guess I related to a lot of key elements of Eugénie Grandet, even like her stubbornness and her like loyalty. She's a loyal person, and in a lot of ways she is a very idealized character. But again, the ending he gives her, I thought was just brilliant. The other element, here is love. He talks a lot about love. Paternal, familial love, romantic love, love of money, all kinds of love that I just I just loved. There's so much, I love love. But I really do. I love these kinds of intimate studies of people and characters and the good and the bad elements of love. Like, not every part of love is bad. Love can be great and pure and innocent. And yet that does not guarantee you a happy ending, right? It does not guarantee you happiness in your life. And as a matter of fact, that love might actually be guaranteeing you suffering and unhappiness, even if it's pure, innocent, just love. And so, really great. One of the other really fascinating characters in here that I mentioned at the beginning is the cousin. I kind of really loved and enjoyed what Balzac did with the cousin, especially the associations he makes in terms of having the cousin engaged in the slave trade. It's not a key element of this book, but I very much appreciated that small element that he manages to insert into the novel. And so this, in my review, in my January wrap-up, I mentioned that this is the first entire Balzac novel that I've read. It will not be the last. Marina over at Young, Gifted, and Black already left me a recommendation in my January wrap-up, and I plan on taking her recommendation and reading another Balzac book in the next month. So if you have any recommendations of what other Balzac novels I should give a chance to, leave them down below. If you have any thoughts on Eugénie Grandet, even if you disagree with my interpretation of it, please leave it down below. I am happy to chat about our different thoughts and opinions of this book, because it's a book that I really enjoyed. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.